Uh, uh, Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, anybody listening to me. Today, I want to talk about this very difficult issue concerning the management of the Public Order Act in Zambia. As most countrymen in Zambia will agree with me, this issue has been an area of grave concern among all citizens, where the Public Order Act appears not to be in conformity with the provisions in our constitution. And I want to specifically suggest the methods and ways in how we may wish to advance management of the Public Order Act. As most of you agree with me, you cannot just repeal that act, as some of our colleagues have been saying, because every country requires a Public Order Act in order that it's able to control or manage violence. And what is at issue in our setup is a situation where we appear have been violating the Constitution. And there are basically three examples I can give offhand where the Public Order Act in our case was violated. But before I go to that, let me, I'm assuming that all of us know the origin of this piece of legislation, which began during the colonial days, 1955, which was meant to control the activities of the African National Congress. And it was opposed by the leadership at the time, Mr. Harry Mwanga Nkumbula and Liso and Naburiato. They argued against it in Parliament that we didn't need to have a bill like that in our statutes, but it was nevertheless enacted and it has been in our statutes to this date. My quarrel appears to be that it has not my quarrel, and both also the quarrel by many of our citizens, is that it has been tends to be abused by the politicians when they get into power. And for instance, you recall on 29th September 2017, the police arrested and assaulted 6 human rights defenders who gathered outside Parliament to peacefully protest against the government's purchase of the 2 fire tenders at an inflated cost of $2 million. There was also, you recall, on April 2018, where the UPND was refused the authority to have a meeting in Kanyama on security grounds, though the UPND party, as it were, had been given authority to have that meeting in Kanyama compound. And there are several others, including the other one where one gentleman on 10th January 2018, a UK lawyer by the name of Oliver Holland, was arrested somewhere in Shingola when he tried to meet with people who had been deprived of their rights to enjoy the waters of the Kafue River by KCM, and he was arrested for having had a meeting with the citizen. It continues, and our statutes, or rather our courts, have ruled variously against the abuse of the Public Order Act. It's variously. The first one, of course, was the Mulondika judgment, which repealed, I think it was Article 5 or 5.4 of the Public Order Act, and then there was, apart from that, there was the issue of of the of the um, um, of Laz, who took the case again to court for refusing them to make a procession to protest against the third term of that President Chiluba was trying to bring up, and many others like that. So this has continued to be a problem in our country, and we need to address it. And my view is to try and uh, influence our government currently, namely the European government, to try and take this into their mantle and do the needful so that we change this management. The idea of repealing it does not arise, and those who are arguing that it must be cancelled, in my view, are not correct, because we need to have order, public order, in the discourse, in the way people assemble or hold processions. So I've six or five or so issues, suggestions, which I think can go a long way in assisting us deal with this problem. The first one, in terms of my recommendation, is that we should remove the statute from being managed by the Zambia Police Service. It should go or under the Ministry of Home Affairs and Internal Security. It must go to the owners of land, namely the Ministry of Local Government. That the administration and provision of the Public Order Act, with respect to advance notification, should be left to non-partisan professional institutions. The law should be administered by the public, service, namely the Ministry of Local Government, and it in a very so that because it is the councils who hold land, who administer our streets, and they are the ones who can tell and give indicate whether in that street where you want to hold a procession, it's free. The benefits of assembly, the right to assembly, like I said, are provided for in the Constitution, and we should cannot be changed willy-nilly by anybody. And the benefits are all known to all of us. That and if I can just mention one or two of them, is that one, it's a right, it's a human right, for one to have a right to assemble. First, the freedom of assembly helps to create a positive environment for collective politics. A collective voice of citizens will most likely be acted upon by powers that be than one voice. When people group together and assemble and meet and talk, it's more, they are more likely to be heard than even one person like for instance, in the case like I am now. Secondly, the freedom of assembly allows citizens to socially communicate, talk to each other, and build human contact. The more citizens meet and they discuss matters of mutual interest, the better the legitimacy of the political decision they make will be. And thirdly, the freedom of assembly allows even those who are marginalized citizens to be heard by the state and their demand be attended to in this process. It allows minorities to influence, to have something, to influence the majority decisions, and in that way legitimize state power. And fourthly, the freedom of assembly is important because it ensures the continuation and communication between voters and their elected representatives, and this way advances good governance and the democracy which we fought for and changed in 1991. And lastly, one could say it basically the right to assembly, advances the development of citizens in terms of advancing social interaction and relaxation and companionship. And therefore, that is why our constitution is very strong, that it appears as part of part 3 of our constitution, which uh, is so important. The Bill of Rights, you cannot refuse human beings to meet. But what is the important also, even though there are derogations to this right, is that um, we should also know how to manage it. We should not, manage it in a manner that it provides for the basically almost like wanting to do away with the constitutional provision. That is why I'm suggesting that we do. My suggestion is that we is to consider the following suggestion that I'm making. One, which the administration of the provision of the Public Order Act in respect to advance notification should be left non-partisan institutions. And I'm arguing that the law be managed under the Ministry of Local Government. And secondly, the state should ensure that the Zambia Police Force and service, as we call it now, and all citizens comply with both civilian and court orders where necessary, as non-compliance may undermine the rule of law. This was the case, for instance, on 9th September 2012, when the Zambia Police Service refused to allow the UPND to hold the rally in Lusaka Sakanyama compound, even after the High Court had given an order restraining the Zambia Police Service from interfering with the planned, political rally. The law must be amended and strengthened to punish police officers that disobey orders to face civil and even criminal liability, as well as administrative or disciplinary actions. Thirdly, the law of the Zambia Police Service, in this case, in policing assemblies, meetings, and processions, must be clearly spelled out in the law. The state must ensure that the Zambia Police Service is professional, fair, and non-partisan, and also ensure that the Zambia Police Service is at all times adequately trained and conversant with the law and have adequate resources to police any event when requested to do so by civilian authorities. If the Zambia Police Service is not adequately prepared, the law should provide for the empowering of the organizers to provide ushers and stewards to manage the assembly meetings or procession. Fourthly, where the security organs such as the Zambia Police Service or the intelligence organs or the armed forces establish that the assembly or meeting or procession is a threat to public security and safety, efforts should be made by the state to arrest the situation even before making a decision on whether to police the assembly, meeting, or procession, and ensure that the threat to security is removed. The decision to postpone or disrupt a public assembly, meeting, or procession should be taken as an action of last resort only. And fifthly, the law should also provide for the spontaneous assemblies and meetings and processions, without advance notification to regulating civilian authorities. Clear guidelines in a statutory instrument for policing such events should be established by the state. Zambia should create the practice of creating public places where citizens can meet and be allowed to express themselves without advance notification. A good example is what happens in the UK, where people can go at Hyde Park or Hyde Park corner in London, and and say whatever they want to say, without causing any problems to anybody. And lastly, it is my view that the requirement to making citizens appeal to the Minister of Home Affairs if an advance notification is refused, should be repealed. There's no need for it, because it's basically that kind of clause is inherently discriminatory. The provision in the Constitution that require organizers to have the right to challenge the regulatory authority in the High Court, pursuant to Article 28 of the Constitution, is sufficient. If you refuse the meeting, you can go to court and challenge that, but you don't need to start appealing again to another politician to be given the authority. The petition in this case must be determined expeditiously if it is taken to court, and ensure that the courts give priority to this, because it's a human right. This is all I had to say. Basically, I think that the Public Order Act should be removed from the Zambia Police Service as an administrative organ of the state, and be passed over to the local authorities, namely the Ministry of Local Government, who in turn allow the councils, or the district secretaries, the district clerks to provide and manage that, and then to be the district councils or the mayors who will now be indicating or telling or providing messages to the police that they will be meeting. Could they go over there? No one should be able to stop anybody from meeting or gathering or holding a procession. This is a fundamental right of all human beings. I thank you very much.